Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Sea Dragons from Draco Studios. Although technically this box is published by Fractal Yugos and will be published by Draco Studios shortly, Draco Studios just picked up this game for the English version of the game, hence the not exactly saying Sea Dragons on the cover. This game is designed by several people from, let's go through the names because I don't remember them all. We have Yanav Kahana, Penny Schechter, Simone Lisciani, and illustrated by Webison Santiago, and Sea Dragons is a polyomino placement game. Basically in the game, you're going to be placing polyominoes out onto the board, but not polyominoes in a typical sense. Rather, you're going to have a card, you'll play the card, and then you'll go ahead and create your polyomino shape, creating little sea dragons as you go through this process, and then getting whatever that sea dragon is on, and or paying for whatever the sea dragon is on too. In fact, that move I just made is highly inefficient, but let's talk a bit more about that. But that's the general idea of the game. You're going to have these cards, these polyomino cards over here. You're going to be taking these cards, you're going to be using them to place these little sea dragons onto the board, creating a little, head situation, and then the body, in order to be able to gather the various bonuses on the board in order to score as many points as possible while being mindful of the area control puzzle at place. To that end, let's talk about how you score before we go more into the actual mechanisms of your turn. But the way you score in the game is, first of all, you're going to be earning money as you place dragons. You're going to place dragons over here, getting money for these spots, and whenever other players place dragons, they're going to give you money if they place next to your dragons. Money is worth a point each at the end of the game. You're also going to be getting these various pirate ships as you place dragons. You could trade those in for these little wanted perks over here, which have a point number, and sometimes other benefits. These are all points, but sometimes they have other benefits as well that they'll give you for trading in the various pirate ships that you've managed to conquer. And then the main way you're going to get a giant chunk of points is for the area control puzzle. This game has 4 different sectors on the board. We have west, north, east, and south over here, and as you have dragons in different sectors, whoever has the most sea dragons in each sector is going to score points for the uncovered whirlpools that are left. These over here, these whirlpools in each sector, each of these that are not covered, if they're covered, they will not be worth points, but if they're uncovered, they will be worth a lot of points. The person who has the most sea dragons in each sector, as well as second place, will get half points rounded down, which means each of these sectors represents a giant chunk of points that you want to be very mindful of as you place your dragons onto the board. To that end, what does an individual turn look like? Well, first of all, you're going to get dragons based on the player count. You can have a certain number of dragon heads. Your body's a little bit more unconstricted because it depends on the card you play, but your dragon heads, you get a certain number of them based on the player count to make sure the board fills up nicely. And you're going to, on your turn, play a card in order to place a sea dragon down the board. So for example, let's pretend I'm going first over here. Let's pretend I have this card over here. I just grabbed it from the pool of the side, but let's pretend this is in my hand over here. I'll play this card, and I'll place dragons out. Now your first dragon does have to touch this little center island over here. So for example, maybe I'll go ahead and create a little dragon down here, oriented as such. We have a little splitting apart dragon, and I'll get those 2 blue pirate ships. A little nice little spot over there. No real cost to what I'm doing because I just didn't place them on any rapids or any whirlpools, which will have additional costs. It becomes the next person's turn, although before I do that, first I should go ahead and restock a card. So let's go ahead, let's put this card down here. Now whatever card you play, you have to refill it with a different card. And you're going to have a hand of 2 cards to start with. As you play cards, you draw a different one than the one you placed. So I'll go ahead and draw this little small one over here, adding that to my hand. Let's pretend I have another one of these over here for my starting hand. And then from there, the next player is going to go ahead, we'll reveal this next card. The next player will go ahead and go, and they'll go ahead and play a card. And again, I haven't actually constructed hands over and over here, so I'm just going to play from the top of the deck. They'll go ahead and place this similar card over here. Now, they have a different little puzzle that they're going to go for. They're going to go ahead and build off of my dragon. So they'll go ahead and place this down here. They'll also grab that blue ship, but they're going to build off my dragon. You can always build off the center island or another player's dragon. Your dragons, on the other hand, can never touch your own dragon. So you could have a dragon piece diagonally, but you can never have a piece touching your own dragon that's already been constructed. I'll take this piece over here, but because I've placed on a rapid, I have to pay 2 gold coins. Whenever you cross the center line of an area, you have to pay 2 gold coins, or whenever you go on top of a whirlpool. Now, the reason for that is twofold. First is it gives you a little bit of a challenge to be mindful of as you place. How are you going to try to avoid the various things that cost more while trying to get all the various things that you want? The second, and probably more impactful, is the fact that when you place on that center line, this dragon counts as being in both of these areas for the sake of area control. That single placement gave them effectively 2 dragons for the sake of area control, but you have to be mindful of the fact that you're paying 2 coins every single time you do something like that. In fact, if you're clever enough, there are certain dragons where, for example, this dragon over here, you can get this dragon over here, counting effectively as 3 dragons, but you'll have to pay twice for that dragon. So you can be really clever to a small degree. And then also, the whirlpools are important because every time you cover a whirlpool, you are denying points to whoever would win in that area. So it's both a placement puzzle you have to be mindful of, but also if you don't think you're winning in an area, sometimes it's worth tanking somebody else's score to a certain degree if you don't think you're going to be there getting the points from it. It's going to cost you, so you want to be very mindful and don't spend too much of your energy tearing down the leader. Focus more on building yourself up, but it is something to be mindful of. Player is going to repeat, oh wait, one thing, because we touched this dragon over here, the orange player is going to get a coin because we touched this dragon on the board. Whenever you touch somebody else's dragon, and that applies if you touch multiple people's dragons. So for example, if this person plays a card over here, and they go ahead and place a, let's try to create a little thing. Let's say they went ahead and did this dragon over here, like so, and that's also going to go ahead and give us one of these, which will draw 2 cards and select one of these bonuses. Wrong deck, wrong deck. We're going to draw 2 of these and select one of these cards, selecting one of these 2 bonuses, and these are often either coins, a wild chip you can turn in, and sometimes they are also hidden dragons, which will give you area control in certain areas, which allows you to hold back a bit. Maybe you have 2 secret dragons in the north that other players don't realize are coming. You're going to rinse and repeat. Oh, and then the main reason I showed you that over here is because it's touching both these players. We're going to give a point to each of those 2 players. Pink and orange will both get a coin. And that's basically the game. You're going to rinse and repeat the process until all players have played through all of their dragons. At the end of that, you're going to go ahead and add up the various contracts that they've cashed in by trading in their ships, the coins that they have, as well as the area control aspect of the board, trying to figure out who has the most points, and that is how you play Sea Dragons. Which brings us to a review, starting off with ease of play, and ease of play is tremendously easy here. The rulebook is, 2 pages of rules, practically speaking. There's not a lot to go through. It's very simple, clear, and easy to play. Game time will range a little bit based on player count, but not so much because you do get fewer dragons at higher players, so the game modulates around trying to have a semi-full board as you play through it, regardless of the player count. I'd say probably in the range of 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast players are moving. I think you could knock out a game at 45 minutes, although especially if you're playing with younger players, it might drift closer to that hour mark. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, I appreciate the area control puzzle layered on top of the polyomino placement with the rewards that you're trying to drive at the same time. All those things together give you a bit of a puzzle of trying to figure out, okay, great, you have this cool little card over here, but where do you want to place this card? Where is this dragon going to fit best in a way that's going to give you the area control, possibly go in multiple areas, being mindful of the money you're trying to spend here. That fact that the better spots or the spots that block others or help you the most will cost you extra coins, and coins are a very limited currency. That gives you enough things to consider as you go through it that you're trying to be mindful of how to place out your polyomino. That multiple ways to score means it's not a purely one-dimensional puzzle. Even just the rewards alone, sometimes you're trying to think through what's better to get a ship over here or to get a reef card. Well, those reef cards could end up being ships. In some cases, sometimes even 2 ships of a random color. You have less control, but you possibly get more bonuses for it. And the area control part of the game is huge. There's a lot of points being scored in the area control game, and so you want to be very, very mindful that you don't simply focus on the board and what's shiny, but rather you focus on what will be shiny at the end of the game as you go through it. Combine that with just the general visual aesthetic of having a bunch of polyomino dragons as you spread across the sea over here, and it gives the game a nice solid charm to a light polyomino game with a bit of strategy. As far as things I don't like in the game, there's a few small aspects. First of all, I do think the area control puzzle seems like the dominant strategy. The amount of points you get from area control seems so large compared to the points you get otherwise that it really feels like that is a big area of the game to focus on. You can kind of ignore the rest of the game if you're going to do well with area control. I don't suggest ignoring the rest of the game because usually you can focus on both at once, but it almost feels like the area control is the dominant part of the game as opposed to a way that you score. I'll say that higher player counts in the game felt a bit busy, and lower player counts in the game feel a bit empty. It falls into a weird zone where, to me, I really like this game best at 3 players. 2 is fine, it's doable, but it really feels a little more empty as the board goes, and once you get to 4 or even 5 players, 5 is really busy, you get less time to place your dragons, but even at 4 players, the board tends to feel a bit busier. Like, it's fine. I think 2 and 4 are both fine player counts, 5 I don't think I'd want to do, and 3 to me is the sweet spot of the game. I'll say that the biggest thing I have as far as complaints against the game isn't really a complaint so much as the fact that polyomino games are a dime a dozen. Great polyomino games come out every single year, and I don't know if I felt that there was any particular hook for Sea Dragons. The game does everything well, but I don't know if there's any element of the game that I felt was super impactful as far as this is why I should own this polyomino game contrasted with any others, which isn't really a complaint per se. It's, I guess, just the victim of this being such a crowded genre and a crowded field that you almost have to do something to stand out, and I don't know if for me Sea Dragons did. I think the little appeal of the sea monsters, that gives you a visual aesthetic that is, different and more compelling than any other polyomino game I've played. Well, not any other polyomino game. It's hard to be as visually compelling as Foundations of Rome, but that has a price tag attached to it. But I will say it is a cute little element, but as far as the gameplay, I don't know if there was a pop that made this one stand out in a crowded field. As far as I can see, others not liking, A few small things. One, you really have to be mindful of your money as you play through it. You cannot afford to simply spend money casually. You have to make sure you have money coming in, placing down in money spots, trying to be mindful of that. I like the fact that money is tight personally. It makes the game a bit strategically more worthwhile and whatnot. Not worthwhile, but a bit more to consider as you play. But money is tight, and you might find yourself in a between a rock and a hard place. There is a mechanism to make sure you're not totally stuck, but it kind of involves you trading, and it gives up your turn. It's not really worthwhile. In my opinion, it's something you want to avoid doing. I'll say that the cards can be a bit random as far as, the cards you draw. Not knowing what you get out of the deck might be frustrating for you. Again, for me, it's a risk reward. I think the cards sometimes are worth it, sometimes not. That is the whole appeal or aspect to it. But again, that may be something that you don't appreciate as much. As far as final thoughts on Sea Dragons, I'm a little conflicted on this one. I've had fun playing it. It is a fine game. It does a job. It is cute. It is easy to table. I think, especially if you're looking at a family away game, it does have an immediate charm and appeal that appeals to, lighter or more gateway gamers or families or kids or all of that. But I think just even within that category, even with that subcategory of polyominoes, my biggest issue with this game isn't really any issue. The game played fine. It was enjoyable. I've had fun with it. It's just a crowded genre. Polyomino games are a crowded genre. Whether you're talking about polyomino games that appeal to more heavily strategic gamers, or whether you're talking about polyomino games that appeal to gateway gamers or families, it is an incredibly crowded genre, and I don't have a complaint against the game, but I also know that for me, it just didn't necessarily stand out. For me, it's a 3 out of 5. I've had fun with it. It's a good game. It's just a crowded field in general. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for, I think one of the things that is interesting about this game is many polyomino games really do focus on having your own separate boards that you work on. And to that end, I think 2 other polyomino games that also give you a shared board. You're playing that polyomino puzzle, you're placing those little shapes down the board, but you're doing so on a shared board. One is going to be Paris. Paris is a 2-player polyomino game which you're playing on a shared board, and it is amazingly delightful, but also amazingly mean, and you have to be okay with that. And if you're looking for something a little bit less mean, but where you're working on a bit of a shared board, although you're starting off in your own corners and drifting towards the center, In the Hall of the Mountain King from Burnt Island Games is going to be another polyomino game where you're trying to manage the whole board system, a whole different puzzle, as you slowly work your way in towards the center. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.